I was thinking before more
Where's your people at?
yes, it's just like weird.
Well, I know where Kyle is, or not Kyle, or Ryan is, but
That's all. There's a security guard downstairs.
Ryan will be here. You can talk to Oshman.
What does that consist of?
He's alive. He's he jumped on the call.
Especially with the question.
I know, I looked at the flowers.
I was asking words for Oscar. It moves. It doesn't move.
I don't think
They're both so good, right?
he was too.
He was late like every class.
Okay, everybody got it open? Okay, come on, go. Hustle.
We'll go back.
You were? Aaron and I both.
He goes
Today.
So yet again, y'all are the only group that's 100% present. So,
You should count towards something. Yeah.
When you're doing the curves.
Okay, once again, pull up the spreadsheet that I sent you this morning. Okay, just so you know what the plan is for today, so I'm going to attempt to kind of walk you through the simple financial feasibility analysis model, the one that most of you have seen before, with the exception of probably Alex and Armando. But at the same time, we're going to kind of walk through it and kind of explain it again, just so that once again, those of you that even haven't seen it for a while can kind of acquaint yourself with it. Then also, on that same email that I sent you is a very basic, simple sort of building cost estimator. And we'll kind of walk through that if we have a few moments. But the two highlights of today, supposedly around 8:30, one of the gentlemen associated with building the software, Gridix, is actually going to come in and do a demo, okay? And so what I'm giving you is a handout of one of the outputs of the software that Brian and Andrew, I think, worked through yesterday. But he's going to hang out and show you guys how to use the software and kind of what it can do and that sort of thing. And then obviously at 10 o'clock, we should have all of the mentors coming in. And then at that point, I'll kind of talk a few minutes about what you guys are supposed to be doing. And then we'll try to get you guys into other rooms so that you can kind of work together and kind of hopefully get some ideas and feedback from them as to kind of what you're doing and what they think about what you're doing. Okay, does that make sense? All right, and then as far as the e-portfolio thing is, hopefully you have kind of put everything together and you're welcome to, I will be here, but there's no actual formal class for the e-portfolio. It's just simply, once again, you need to make sure that you're getting everything uploaded and done for the e-portfolio. But if you've got any questions, then certainly feel welcome to let me know. Okay, any questions on any of that? Pretty straightforward? Okay, so as I said, what I want to do to start out with, I'll give you a handout, and this is once again our ordinary, regular, simple financial feasibility model. So this spreadsheet, all of the cells that are in green are the input cells, meaning those are the ones that you're actually going to put information into. The cells that are white are output cells. All the calculations are being done in those cells, so you don't need to replace anything in the white cells, okay? So, for those of you, once again, kind of reorient yourself with this, there's two parts to this model. One is called the front door approach, which is this first one, which is where you start with your site acquisition cost, your construction cost, and then you sort of work through to come up with what would be my minimum required rent per square foot for the space, okay? The other model that's right below it does just the opposite, okay? The backdoor approach. And in this model, what you're doing is you're starting with what is my rent rate, how many square feet do I have to actually rent, and then work forward, and then ultimately it tells you how much can you afford to spend on your construction as well as your acquisition cost for your land. Okay, does that make sense, everybody? Yes?
Yes.
You guys? Okay? All right. So, just to sort of start off, let's just see how much we already know about our particular property. So this property, we're going to put in some very rough numbers based on your input. So at this point, what was the asking price for the property? You said 12 to 15 million?
Yeah, 12.
Okay, let's just start with the 15 million. We'll start with the highest number, all right? Here we go, 15 million. Okay, now then construction cost. What did you guys, have you guys come up with a number yet? No, okay. So this is, no. But this is where then we go over here to this, the other piece that I sent you in the email, which is a very, very basic cost estimating sort of model, all right, which does it pretty much based upon square footage or on units. So in this case, we go over here to building type, and in this case, apartment 8 to 24 stories, all right, and we'll go ahead and come down, find, let's see, we've got Fort Lauderdale in here, yep, Fort Lauderdale, and in this case, yeah, we'll go with some, okay, yeah, we'll go with the median cost, actually let's go with a high cost just to be safe. All right, how many square feet of buildable space are we going to have in this property? Tell me you guys have calculated that at least. Seriously? What have you guys been doing all week?
The stuff that you wanted us to do.
Well, part of the site analysis is figuring out, obviously the building envelope, so you should know at a minimum what the square footage of the building is going to be.
500,000 square feet.
Okay? All right. And we'll go ahead and leave the overhead, profit, and bonding at those sort of averages. All right, so what they're telling us is our total budget would be somewhere around $49 million, which is $98 a square foot, okay? Make sense? Now, once again, once you hopefully get some revised numbers that are maybe a bit more accurate, we can kind of feed those in. But for now, we're just going to round this off to about $49 million. All right, so let's go over here. All right. So a total project cost of $64 million, all right? Now the loan to value ratio, all right? Kyle, what do you think we can get there?
I would say like 70.
Okay. All right, and an interest rate and term, we probably get a 30-year amortization.
4.2. Yeah, I'd say low fours.
Okay, so let's say 4.25, all right? Debt service coverage ratio will be we'll be kind of liberal on this since it's residential, we'll say 1.25. All right, operating expenses, we're going to leave that blank for the moment. Okay, occupancy rate, we've got 85%, so let's kick that up and say that we can get lucky, 95%. All right.
Danger.
And we'll kick it down, 90%. All right. All right, so leasable square feet. Obviously, it's more than 10,000, so we said, what was it? You said 500,000 was the total square footage, but how much of that is leasable? Probably, let's say 80% of that, so maybe around 400,000? Okay. All right. So, that's not horrible. $9.18 per square foot, and that's per year, okay? So if you take that, divided by 12, that'd be 76 cents a square foot, if our numbers are accurate. But that's a real big if. I don't know if I completely believe you with respect to the square footage on the building, nor do I think that maybe those construction costs may actually be a little bit low per square foot, even though the cost estimator is saying that's where they are. But there's a starting point, okay? And as I said, my suspicion is it's probably not quite reality. But you understand kind of what we did to where we get to where we are, okay? So we probably need to go back and we need to make sure that those numbers are reasonably accurate. Now, let's flip it around the other way, all right? We said we had 400,000 square feet of leasable square feet. Now, let's put this in context of what's down there right now. We said that probably the average lease rate is somewhere between $2.25 and $2.50 a square foot per month. Does that seem reasonable? Yes or no?
250, yeah.
Okay. All right. So what I'm going to do is
225.
Okay, 225 times 12. All right. And then we're going to say a 90% occupancy. We're not going to have anything here for operating. And that was another thing that would have changed our model, obviously, because we didn't have any operating expenses. We're going to need to deal with that. All right, 1.25 for our debt coverage ratio. We said 4.25 for the loan for 30 years. Okay, loan to value, I think we said 70%. Okay, and then construction cost, other than the site, we said was like, what was it, 49 million?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Other than the site, yeah. All right. So once again, I think we're way off here, and probably a lot of this has to do with the income. But more than likely, we probably should have a pretty substantial amount. Let's just try like 3.5 million. Yeah, that starts to get much more in the range of things, about 30%. So let's go back up here. Yeah, that starts to get us a little bit more realistic. Okay, but in general, you see how the model basically works, okay? Armando, Alec, are you guys okay with what we're doing?
Yeah.
Okay? So all you need to understand is try to get accurate numbers, work it from both directions to sort of see what you're ending up with, to see whether or not it looks reasonable. And once again, this was completely on the fly, no really, in my opinion, strong evidence to sort of support this one way or the other, okay, other than just sort of throwing out numbers and throwing them in. So hopefully what you guys have done and are doing is collecting the more actual realistic numbers to be able to populate that model. Now, the other thing that I want to make sure that you're doing as it relates to the model is that you probably take that model and you modify it, okay? Modify it according to the project that you've got so that you maybe include some additional detail, kind of break out the unit type and a handful of other things. So don't just pop that model basically into your report and into your presentation. Okay, does that make sense? All right. All right, any questions? And once again, I think I gave you a handout of that in addition to the, obviously the spreadsheet that I sent you. Okay, any questions? Okay, so those of you just sort of coming in, Max from Gridix is going to be hopefully here in a couple of minutes, and then he's going to walk you through. All of you guys are going to get access to the software online, and we'll kind of walk you through how to be able to use that. The handout that's on your desk, the zoning feasibility report, is a report directly generated through Gridix, so it kind of gives you an idea of the sort of information that is out there from that particular site. And then what we're going to do is, after he finishes his presentation, and it should be roughly about the time that your mentors are going to come in, then that's the reason for the poster board size pieces of paper. We're going to probably send you off to different rooms. What it looks like is the building is full of a wide variety of things that are going on today. So I'm going to try to direct you into some places that may be a little bit more obscure, that may or may not have whiteboards in them, so that's the reason for the paper, so at least you guys can hopefully huddle around a table and be able to kind of sketch out ideas. And then after that, then probably kind of come back and give me a report on how everything went, okay?
Kudos to whoever got us the year subscription, that's great.
Well, that would probably be Aaron.
Yeah, kudos.
So, okay?
Thank you, Aaron.
All right, any questions on anything? Okay, all of you heard from your mentors, yes? Okay, so hopefully all of your mentors are going to be here this morning at 10 o'clock to be able to kind of work with you. Once again, keeping in mind, hopefully you have some information about your site analysis that you can share with them. Hopefully you've got some other information that you can kind of walk them through what you're thinking about, kind of your plan of attack in terms of the presentation, both the written and oral. But, you know, once again, their role is really to just give you feedback more so than to obviously tell you what to do, okay? Now, we'll try to have a quick little session with them at the very beginning of all of this, so hopefully that becomes clear, okay? Now, did Ryan actually send you login information for the Gridix?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead and try to see if you get yourselves logged in. Does everybody have it? Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. So go ahead and try to get logged in so that way whenever he gets here, hopefully in a few minutes, we can jump right in without too much delay. That's my understanding, he's one of the guys that actually wrote the software. So this is pretty impressive.
Yeah, he's got a good background in zoning too.
That's what I've heard, yeah.
Is Max Zavala?
Yep. Ah, perfect. Perfect timing, literally. Morning. Hey Max, how are you?
Max.
Nice to meet you. Absolutely. Let me get out of your way. We've got you set up on two different platforms here. So this one is all touchscreen with the keyboard there. And that one is this keyboard and system here. So however you want to do it, you want to, so you can see different things on different screens. Okay. Right up to you.
I think that's great.
Get out of your way.
So, let me.
All right, everyone. This is Max Zavala. He is obviously one of the founders of Gridix, and he has agreed to come in and talk to us a little bit about the software application. And I think all of you have received login information, so hopefully you can kind of get logged in and sort of follow along with the presentation. As Max may or may not have been informed by Ryan, you know, you guys are obviously working on a project in downtown Fort Lauderdale. And what we have already done, I think Andrew and Ryan have already printed out this handout for you, one of the zoning reports for that particular site. So hopefully we can kind of you know, use that as a test case for running through all of this. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Max, and just so that you know what I gave them, there you are.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, so good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
How you guys doing?
Good.
So I'm gonna tell you a little bit about the company, about the applications, about why we came up with this thing. So once again, my name is Max. I'm the co-founder of Gridix. I'm an architect and urban planning by training. I've been doing architecture and urban planning for almost 20 years now. And for the last 15, I've been solely focused on urban planning. When I just started on this, on that field, on that career, I started working for DPC, Duane Empire Cyber Plan in Miami. And one of the jobs that they were active at that time was the Miami 21, basically the rezoning of the whole city of Miami. So me, being the newbie, they put me to analyze about 100 different parcels around the city, random. And they wanted me to do one analysis of the previous code and one with the new code with residential, office, and a bunch of combinations. So after about like 300 SketchUp models, and I don't even remember how many Excel sheets, I was either about to quit, about to shoot myself, or instead I came up with this thing. So basically that was the idea. It's like, there has to be a better way to do this. And the other things that then I started doing the same type of project in multiple places. Saudi Arabia, Latin America, different places here in the US. And the problem was very much the same. We'll come in, we'll analyze the city, we'll come up with the zoning regulations, and we'll explain it to people, and you'll see that the deer in the headlights type of look. Like, okay, you cannot relate exactly what this means. Height people understand. Setbacks, FAR, lot coverages, it just goes beyond. But at the end of the day, and one of the things that was freaking me out a little bit, real estate worldwide is a multiple trillion dollars type of money in words of wealth in the world. And it's all governed by the zoning codes. And nobody understands them. Nobody understands them. I mean, it was amazing going to New York and doing this. There's whole, basically huge companies of attorneys that the only thing they do is interpret the zoning code. And it's just mind-boggling to me. But the other component that we were trying to solve, as a planner, is because we will go in, do all this stuff, we'll choose 100 parcels, doing an analysis, but people will come in and say, listen, it looks pretty, but I want to know how my parcel gets affected. I want to know how my neighbors gets affected. And going out there and doing, I don't know, 300,000 parcels, 400,000, 500,000, is unfeasible. I mean, we can't just analyze every single one. But it's important. The last one was, we did so many ones then in BPC that looked great, but where projects will come in, match every regulation, and it will look horrible. And we were like, what happened? Well, what happens is that we as architects, we put certain stuff as rule of thumb in the designs that we use for our interpretations of our own codes that is not necessarily built into the code. So we also needed something that will be able to tell us, this is the real thing, what's coming. So the other co-founder, Felipe Aceña, he actually came from the other side, from the investor, from the real estate, from the financial world. And his concern on that end was, there's so many decisions we need to make it actually a purchase of a parcel. Is it a good investment? Is it a bad investment? On and on and on. And the information needed was all over the place. Different websites, different sources, some in a certain level of accuracy, some in a different level of accessibility. Nothing was easy. So he came actually on that end. How can we put all of that public information, it's not that it's secret, it's just in different places, in a single place where I can get all that information in a heartbeat. Basically, those two worlds collided, and that was the birth of Gridix. Gridix is a 4-year-old company. We started in late 2015. We're based out of Miami. We're actually fairly small at this point still. We have about maybe 10 to 12 people in Miami, and about a team of about 12 also programmers in the company. So we're still very small, but we're starting to get ahead, and we're starting to get a lot of seats. Fort Lauderdale is one of them. So yeah, we heard you guys doing a project in Fort Lauderdale, so I'll show you that one. But let me show you. I think what I'm gonna do. Well, yeah, let me show you one of our cities in here. Let's do Fort Lauderdale. So the first thing that we created was SonicHew. Basically, that's the software that I built up. This is the system that I was able to calculate based on zoning regulations anywhere, any parcel, I would just build it up. But this is, I'm gonna actually go backwards. Now I'm gonna show you all of the parcels, all the projects that we have right now, all of the platform. So this is what we call Code Hub. Code Hub is really the dream of both Felipe and myself at the very beginning. This is the one that has all of the public information available, plus all the pre-calculated building for the whole city. So here's the deal. This can replace or supplement, if you will, the typical public address websites that the city have from the point of view of GIS information. So you can actually turn on the different layers, for example. Probably the first time I'm doing this is taking a little bit. So there you go, so all the different layers and the different zoning categories. You can actually turn on the different elements, like for example, in in Fort Lauderdale, they do have the downtown design guidelines. They actually follow that even way more than the zoning. And other things, like for example, FAA height restrictions or anything like that. So all of the different layers available from the GIS department is there. In addition, you can actually go in and select any parcel, and take that one, and it will actually pull in all of the information from the database that we have available. And it will actually, so it gives you some general information about addresses, sales records, some neighborhood areas and so forth, and of course a Google Street View. But here's when it starts getting interesting. So this one, it starts showing you all of the zoning information. This is already part of our system. So one of our key features is that we get all this information from different places and we merge them together and then we make the relationship. So we know each parcel, it tells you what streets it is touching, what is the neighbors that they're touching, what is the type of layers that it's touching. With Fort Lauderdale, very soon, I actually have a meeting next week with them. We're going to be even tying to infrastructure. So what water pipes are we touching, what sewer lines is it touching, etc. So, and hopefully right after that is capacity as well. So I'm going to show you another one because in this one in particular, Fort Lauderdale didn't want it to expose all the calculated data. But I'll show you North Miami in a minute and you'll see all the potential that we can do in there. But before that, so everything that you see there, of course, is the existing conditions. Is all whatever is right there online. And again, this is going to take a little bit. That's the capacity based on zoning regulation of the whole city. So that is actually now SonicHew that went parcel by itself and calculated the development potential rate. So that's height, setbacks, FAR calculations, densities. Yes.
So if you're hooked into the public data APIs, right? So when is it dynamic enough to where, say there is a zoning change, will it build out?
Yes. Yeah. So basically, our system is built right now. So let me backtrack a little bit. Our one typical countries with the cities. So the cities are our major clients for sure. We do offer, of course, private licenses for the systems as well. Once we do get the contract with the cities, we do get a direct access to the GIS. Now, some cities, for others, it's not the case, unfortunately. They don't have a direct AWS connection to their GIS servers. So they basically upload their data, whatever, and they make a change to an FTP, we pull it in, 24 hours later, the whole thing is updated. Cupertino, California, on the other hand, they do have a direct. So they make a change, we don't even know, basically just change it, updates the whole thing. Other cities, they actually send us an email, so what can I tell you? So actually our CEO, he always says that, like, especially in this world, is we're taking it from the horse and buggy to the fighter jet. We kind of like went to that leap. So that, to be very honest, that has been one of the hardest part about growing, is because it's kind of freaking out a lot of cities out there. But yes, so basically we are able to respond to changes very, very quickly. So what this one is doing is actually, the system right now is able to calculate about 2,000 parcels per hour, and that's with one server. So that was, for Lauderdale, took about 3-4 days. If they really need to see a new amendment, we can multiply that by 5 servers and have it in a day or a couple of hours. Yes?
Cloud or on-site?
It's all cloud. All of our platform is actually cloud-based. You don't need to install any software. You don't need to run anything like that. So it also it allows us to do very interesting things. Like, for example, anywhere that you see parcels that don't have a building, that is because based on the as-of-right development, based on that sort of regulations, unbuildable. That could be because the lot is too small, because actually the resulting building is too small. Typical situation, like for example, and again, we were sometimes on the others and the sign and sort of regulations, and we fall on this trap. We'll say, oh yeah, we want to increase the density potential of the city and tax revenues and all of that spiel. So we're increasing the height from 6 stories to 10 stories, but because, just to preserve privacy, we're asking for for developments to have a 1 foot setback for every foot setback in vertical height. It started on the 5th story up. Great, right? From the concept, it sounds fantastic. What if all the parcels are 50 feet wide? You know, after the 6th story, 7th story, done, the normal building. So that whole spiel of increasing, put it on right into the trash. And there's no way to do it. On the other hand, you're actually forcing people to start buying multiple parcels to make any significant development. So it's all that trickle effect. Like whatever decisions we made from the design point of view, made it into the zoning code, and the trickle effect that it has on development capacity, on financial development of the city, tax revenues, on and on and on, is actually quite complex. Let me show you for a second. Actually, let me show you something instead. So, City of North Miami, these are, as of today, kind of our biggest champions. These guys went in, they had a GIS server, they had a whole bunch of different things. But these guys actually went in and they wanted everything that we had to offer. So they ditched their subscription to Unicode. They ditched their subscription to the AWS service of SREE. And instead, they use our system. So let me, basically you go into northmiami.gridx.com. I'll come back to the other one in a second. The funky thing with this one is that, remember in here, when we selected a parcel, it will actually just show you a couple of the data sets in here and the zoning. I didn't go to this one because it's really just a placeholder. But in North Miami, let me turn them on just so you see them too. If you actually go into any of the parcels, in addition of this all information, here is actually the specific requirements for that parcel. So you have lot coverage, the dwelling, the density, how many actual height, density specifically for the primary, secondary sites, rear setbacks, and the actual development capacity. So you have footprint, you have maximum buildable, lodging room, residential area, office, commercial. Everything is pre-calculated for each one. Yes?
You see, this was cut for everything you have to offer.
Yes.
So, meaning, if you once you set up, there's not the same price.
Right. So in this one, for example, North Miami wanted everything to be exposed. So actually, in this one, you can just go in. It's a free account for this one, and you will be able to see it all. For Lauderdale did it. They didn't want it to have.
So is the reason that Fort Lauderdale business some sort of fear of legal liability, or?
I think so. It's basically kind of what the concern was, which was interesting. When we were actually presented to commission, the planning director, the city manager, they were all freaking out saying, oh my God, it's too big. I mean, every time that we want to do something, people complain. It's going to freak people out. And so, actually, let me switch back to that one for a second. In addition to that, because they thought, oh my God, this whole building is going to be too big. So this is actually going to go back for the updates. We don't really want to see this one because we really follow the characters. Well, no problem. We make that, and the system is actually able to understand corners that have additional towers, all that kind of stuff. Said, oh no, but you know what? We also need to. It's too much. So please tone it down. So we actually went in and we just did an analysis in downtown Fort Lauderdale, and we selected all the parcels that are either vacant or underbuilt. Underbuilt was really anything that was 25% or less, that the current building was 25% or less than the maximum potential. And we identified all of those saying, this is mostly what you're going to be seeing. Further that, they give us some information about how many square feet they typically approve per year and how many projects they approve per year. So we then went and said, so given that, that's more or less the amount of buildings that you're going to be seeing there in the next 15 years or so. But the funny thing was, a lot of people that were in the public, they weren't that freaked out. It's like, okay, now we know. So the questions were, So that's the worst that can happen? That's as big as the city is going to get? Yeah. Oh, okay. It was not, at this point, it's one of those things that, at least in Spanish, we have like, guerra avisada no mata gente. So as long as you advise, of a war, nobody's going to die. So, yeah.
Is the service available abroad?
Sorry, what?
Is the service available internationally?
So yes, we are starting to negotiate with our first couple of international cities. It's actually down in Ecuador, where I'm originally from, and then we're also looking at a couple of cities in Canada.
In terms of acceptance, how you evaluate when you present this to people? In terms of acceptance, how we evaluate they receive it and sign up for it?
So we do have a lot of buy-in. Definitely, people accept the idea. We do have starting to have now, after 4 years of contract, we're starting to have more data in terms of concerns. Because I'll show you in SonicHew version in particular. We also have a SonicReview application. So what is done, especially in Miami, it dropped down review time from about 4 weeks to about a week or a couple of days in terms of approving projects. So and people are basically getting down to their stack of projects to review is basically going down very fast. So in general, we are getting a lot of acceptance. People need it. I don't know if you guys follow Austin, Texas, the Code Next fiasco that happened over there. For those that didn't, basically there was, I think it was 8 years they were working on this. It was 8 years on $4 million or 4 years, $8 million. It was one of those. Anyway, regardless, it's a big number. They were redoing the whole city, brand new zoning. Last commission meeting, this was late 2018. There were so many back and forth, people were just not getting it. People were asking the same questions that I was telling you before. Listen, the pictures are pretty, I want to know my parcel, I want to know my neighbors, and I want to know blah, blah, blah. They couldn't provide that. Basically they dropped it. So whatever the case, $4 million or $8 million down to the trash. They're trying to bring it back in. Right now we are having conversations with them to be able to show them that, because we can do that. So
They're trying to do it by themselves?
sorry?
They're trying to do it by themselves, like they had their own programmers and
They were trying to do it with SketchUp. Yeah.
Are you
So-
thinking about going public someday?
Sorry?
Are you thinking about going public someday?
The company?
Yeah.
Maybe. I'm not at this point. I want to make sure I have signed up my next 5 contracts that I have in the pipeline. I'll get to that one eventually. Yes.
Can you show how you did the projections for the city development, for the future development? Can you just?
On Fort Lauderdale?
Yes.
Well, yeah, of course. Okay, so here's, actually with that, I think is a perfect time to switch back to SonicHew, and I'll show you how that's, because basically all of the buildings that you see here powered is based on that system. So
that was code up, that's not.
yeah, exactly. This is Code Hub, and SonicHew is really the engine behind all of this. So SonicHew was developed. I'll start in Miami and then we'll move in Fort Lauderdale. I typically start in Miami for presentations. As I said, I was part of the team that did it, so I kind of know that code backwards and forwards. So this one came about for some of the reasons that I mentioned before. I want to know what every parcel can do. But one of the gotchas for planners that is so estranged on how that happens every time. We make the designs and all that kind of stuff, and somebody shows up and says, well, I own every parcel in that block. Can I make the whole block? And we're like, oh my God, like how do we even do that? I mean, imagine, I was thinking of doing 500,000, 600,000 parcels. Now imagine connecting, assembling multiple parcels. Your combination just went through the roof in possibilities. So this system was built for that in particular. So here's how this works. You can call in a parcel by address or by parcel number or folio number, or you can just literally select it directly from the screen and say, this is the parcel that I'm going to be looking. As the first time you use it, you saw that one takes a little bit of a while, basically because the system is making the analysis directly if they have enough information to make the calculation, but the next one is actually faster. So, let's say that you have that parcel and you want to basically highlight the parcel that is right underneath, and we're going to select 5 parcels in total and just run a project. So give it just a second in there. Oh, because it is a cloud-based system, by the way, it's heavy in graphics. So you have an older computer, it's going to make you cough, for sure. But this one, so far is so good. So let's say that you have that one and this one, and I'm going to choose a couple more in here.
What's the backend? What's the backend? SQL, Oracle?
Oh no, we have like about 15 different languages that this one is built. Because we use GIS, but we only have a PostGIS system in the background for some of the GIS analysis. But then we have, what is it? We have Solar for certain, with search on the databases. We have tons that run those each one. So, select the 4 parcels in there. They're highlighted in here, addresses, folder numbers, etc. Let's run this project. In average, every project takes about 20 seconds to be calculated. So let it just go through the motions in there. But basically, it's taking into consideration right now all the particular streets that are around, the zoning that it belongs to, how close it is to transportation, public transportation, proximity to other zones, proximity to other uses. So all of that is taken into consideration, and basically just pops up that building that you see right there. So let me change this to a different map just so it's easier to see. Okay. So now, why did I came into here? And it's because all the numbers you see on the right-hand side. So all of the numbers on the right-hand side is all the calculations that the system runs automatically. All of these calculations are stored in our own database, and then that's when we can start comparing with the existing conditions databases. So here's the situation here, that we can say the current building is a 55,000 square foot building, your potential is 200,000 square foot building, your existing footprint is 10,000 square feet, your maximum is 15,000 square feet, and from there we can start running all the different queries and metrics.
That's incredible. So I'm curious then, whenever you have open-ended zoning where there's not a height restriction, or say, are you basing that on the most probable case compared to like the probability of the square feet passed, or how are you doing?
Interesting. That's a great question. So we do have those type of situations out there, and every zoning code that says that there's no height restriction, or there's a height restriction. So Fort Lauderdale was one of those, actually. Okay. So let me get back to this one. Appreciate it.
Are you leveraging like the FAA?
Yes.
Yep.
Exactly. So Fort Lauderdale, we did this whole thing. First meeting, city manager was saying, that's wrong. Downtown has no height limit. You know, it has no height limit. And I was like, that's wrong. So let me close this off. You do have a height limit. It's all of that. So basically, the system has the ability to. So here's the bigger picture. In SonicHew, how it does is you put the regulations to a zone, but you can also put regulations to an overlay, and you can have as many overlays one on top of each other as you want, and they basically get managed with priorities. So the underlying zone has no height limitation, but this overlay does have a height limitation. Other places actually is based on the FAR. So even if there's no height limitations, but your FAR is 5, you know, basically there's, and then actually we can use lot coverage at that point. In the mixture of two, we can define height. So there's always something that we can come up with.
So do you guys have to manually go in and put FAA, or do they actually have an API too?
So they do give us all the shape files, same as with the flooding. So FEMA gives all the flooding and that kind of stuff. Now we do have a process of putting all that information into the system. I'll show you that in a second. So here, let's switch back to this one and I'll show you precisely that. So you're seeing in there a little building. Well, it's a little building that has 428,000 square feet, so, well, I guess not that little. But multiple things. That code had some regulations that we wanted to control. It's a little dark, so I'll put it on the side. But, we required setbacks for towers from the 9th story and above if the street, the width of the street was 70 feet or less in width. So that's why if I flip it in this thing, you see that there's no setback on this side on the towers, but there is a setback on this side of the tower. So it understands the distance on the width of each one of those segments and says this one you need, that one you don't. Also on this other side, and I do pick this one for that reason, there's actually a particular setback here for 8th Street, and that's why actually it has a different type of configuration. Now, you are seeing in there two things, right? You're seeing a transparent box and then the gray box. The transparent box is actually your maximum limitations based on setbacks. So that's your maximum built-in envelope potential in there. But in Miami in particular, there's other regulations: maximum tower footprint, maximum tower length, maximum tower separations. And all of those get represented in the gray boxes there. So the fact that you have a certain limitation doesn't mean you can use it all the time.
So, I'm just trying to conceptualize the way, you know, like you would interact with the city on this. Do you just hand them the keys and teach, you know, their employees the if-thens so they can go in, or do you carry that cost and you have an army of, you know, people reading regulations and creating the if-thens?
So we do have a bunch of planners, architects in my team that we do make the initial review and analysis of the regulations. It is designed so for once we put all of that into the system, from that point it becomes the property of the city. And this is why. These are calibration systems. So each one of these is a different zoning category. And just to make this real, this is T624A. So if I scroll down to T624A, open. Of course, because for my type of user, I can look and touch everything, but normally you won't be able to make a change in here. This is the regulations. So here you can actually, here's where we put in the height limitations for the base of the building, if there's a minimum for the outbuildings, the type of frontages, active frontages, lot occupation, lot dimensions, basically all of the regulations, and you see that some of them are empty. This one is the result of about 15 years of doing this, and I've seen all of the potential variables that can happen, and they're all existing here. And so if the regulation is applicable, you put a number, the system takes it into consideration. If it's not, leave it empty and it just ignores it. So this is the basic one. This is all for basically the geometry of the whole system. Here's the list of all the uses. And here's how we can set up what's allowed by right, by warrant, by exception, or with condition, whatever you want to call it. Parking requirement, if it's global, notice that you can also put parking specific for each use. Capacity, here's where you can set up densities, you can set up combination, bonus or incentives, typologies, what is applicable or not. And here's, if there's anything that it just doesn't fit into one of our fixed fields, we have this system that is basically an if-then situation. So we can really make just any type of combination. Yeah.
So then once you lay down the groundwork, you train them, and then you turn it over to them, and then it's just a cash flow tab. It's an incredible business. Incredible.
Appreciate it. Appreciate it.
He's going to be a user, not a competitor.
Huh?
He's going to be a user, not a competitor.
Great. Yeah.
I think she was first.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Okay, and then when you identified the setback on that building, I didn't see it. Is that the notch where the building notches in?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, exactly. That is the setback. That is the setback in there.
So a lot of the time, I have a couple questions. So first, is this going to be open to like private sector? Okay, and then also, is there some kind of like, because a lot of the code can be just a matter of interpretation sometimes. So do you have like a legal backing
Right, yes, and that's the reason why our main client is the city.
Yeah.
Because part of our process is, so normally, I'll tell you now through our contract process. Typically, we go into the city, we make the contract. From the moment we sign the contract, in about 4 to 5 weeks, all the system is up and running. That's what it takes. Now, in the process of reading the text of the code, which is the different thing, as architects and developers, when actually you go into read a zoning code, you already know the zoning of your property. So you read the zoning code specifically for that, what you're looking for. We don't read it like that. We read it as a book. Page 1, last page. And you find so many inconsistencies, so many contradictions, so many just bad process flow. Reading it like that, that we show up to the city and say, okay, so this is here, this is the first kind of graphic interpretation, and here all the stuff that we just don't understand. We basically start going for the board, and the thing doesn't go live until the city says, yep, that's it. And at the end of the day, it basically becomes their product. So, great question, this is one of those things. Now, we do find there's some situations that, overlays in particular, that there's 2 overlays that they're all both at the same priority. The system will tell you, you have a problem. You have to choose one or the other. So in reality, that's what we're really trying to find. We're trying to find those inconsistencies there. So one of the services that we do offer the cities is something that we call the health check. So we actually, during the process of reading it, we started reading the whole thing. And we identified the inconsistencies. We identify things like, you have 20 pages dedicated to zone RM22. Physically doesn't exist anymore in the city. It's not zone anymore. So you can take 2 pages out of your thing. Especially talk to New York about it. Their code is 4,422 pages long. But just by doing that, we could shave about 1,500 pages because there's zones that don't, I mean, some of the, horse table thing, zoning still exists in the code. Physically, this doesn't exist in New York.
How is this not gonna put planners out of work?
Oh my gosh.
Construct the
So, actually, I hope that they will make better one. I mean, is because now we really start having, every planner, when you're doing a comp plan, you don't think about zoning. And when you're doing zoning, you're not thinking comp plan. That has been our problem since day one. This one bridges that gap. So actually, we do go in, and that's one of, as of right now, my favorite type of process, is we go in as consultants. We go in as consultants for a major project, but at the end, we give them this. Like, this is our product. Now, and say, oh my God, this is awesome. Okay, great, yeah. Part of the consulting, you have it for 6 months. You can keep it. And that's another contract. That's a different thing. So that's one of my favorite ones. So actually, it has helped a lot of planners actually make better decisions. One of the other things that is really, really hard is that we represent everything with drawings, right? Sketch models, or watercolors in the PPC. And the conversation always becomes in the color of the awnings that we chose for that rendering. Is basically missing the forest for the trees type thing. Every conversation. Miami could have been finished in 2 years before if it wasn't for all those public engagements and having those type of conversations for so long. I'm trying to, no, it's not about that, it's about the setback, it's about how to step back on that level. No, it's the colors. Why do we have that traditional light post? I'm like, jeez. But there's that fear that I do have to get it beyond that at some point, yes.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, though. Your objective in it is to, not have to carry the manpower in-house to actively manage this. So the city's still going to need the planners. Your big's going to be on the services, right?
Exactly.
And the consulting.
But private sector planners are screwed.
a little bit. But that's the thing, is like for the bigger cities, maybe. Most of the smaller cities, they don't have the staff.
Yeah.
So they still need this type of planners. And there's a lot of planners that they become their planning division at some point. Yes.
So my question is, I know it's a 4-year-old company, but over time, do you plan on showing like historical and show the direction of development or where that's going, like over time?
That is a fantastic question. Yes. If I have my way, basically at some point, how many of you guys have used the Google Earth, the image history, right there?
Yeah.
That is what I would love to do, for the city to be able to basically go back, well, 20 years back and see how the zoning changed, how the capacity changed, and then actually being able to make it real. The next thing in Code Hub, in the other one, is we're gonna start recording what's been approved, what's been built, what is on that, and then compare with how that one actually compared with this one. And that reminds me, I'm gonna show you something here, because we're not done on this one yet. So, now, briefly on this is really just the direct zoning. Here you see all of the other stuff. You can actually have proximity conditions. So proximity, this is the typical thing that a zone allows liquor stores, but not if you're within 1,000 feet of a school. So that's where we picked up all of that kind of stuff. Abutting is proximity to other zones or uses. So typical thing is you have a 0 setback unless you are next to a residential zone or a single family home. So this is where we picked up all of that stuff. Shared parking, TODs, overlays. This is the typical monster. So if I open one of these guys up, you're gonna see it's actually built exactly the same as the other zone. So you can actually override every single value in the zoning, underlying zoning, if you so need to. But let me get back to this one, because again, we're not done here yet. Here, you can also visualize benefits. So for example, what happens if you do apply a certain incentive that the city offers in there? You basically see how that actually will grow, density, height, other requirements. You can actually...
Is that based on, like, I know that sometimes it's stated explicitly, but where the magic is the probability, right? Is it based on probability or just the explicit?
Explicit. This one is,
Okay.
now, there's some situations that is based on the specific condition of the site. For example, let me try to figure that out. Some of the incentives in Miami don't apply if you're touching a T3 zone. You can do it in a T6, but not if you're touching. So remember that last parcel that we added at the very beginning? Maybe the first three were not touching a T3, but the fourth one did. And that one messed up your whole potential of incentives. This one that's the goal of this one. You can do a project with 3, with 2, with 1, with 4, and compares in a matter of seconds.
Is it dynamic enough, let's say you do have a parcel abutting that one parcel, right?
Yep.
Is it dynamic enough to point that out?
Yes. Yes. It basically it will. If I go in here and choose that and you see nothing happen, here a notification is going to happen and the reason why that didn't do it. This one, of course, you're seeing it here in 3D. You can actually see this kind of as an elevation and a site plan. And actually here you can see actually what is a secondary frontage, what's a primary frontage, what's a secondary, with the dimension of each one of those, and a setback. And you can also use this kind of as an MRI, and as it goes vertical, it basically starts changing on the requirements in each one of those. This one is kind of boring because it only has 2 major changes, but places like New York that literally change that in every story, it becomes really interesting. We do run some statistics in general, the numbers, so it basically tells you how much you can build in terms of floor plate and that kind of stuff. And here's the best one for the private sector. So cities don't use this one too much. We do it for certain elements, but this is the what ifs. This is all of the what happens if I go multifamily, what happens if I go office, what happens if I go mixed use, how did that apply? And the most 4-letter word that goes into development potential, parking. It's not a 4-letter word.
Not even close.
But you know what I mean. So, here's the thing. You see basically now this inputs on the left changes. Now is residential units, average size per unit. And actually, let me try and make this a little smaller. Okay, just so explain that. Okay. So, average size of each one of those units, lodging rooms for hotels, office area, etc. And now you see that the building is empty, just waiting for that. Yes?
So, this site, right?
Yep.
Whenever you do your maximize calculations, can you then export a report that cites the zonings that support that?
Oh, the sites that will support it, yes, but that's in code level. That's on the big one. Yeah, I'll show you that.
And then also, like, for the guarantees, like, you have to get, it's not really complete until you have other municipalities, like, sign off and say this is correct, right? Like, say, like for Deerfield Beach or something, like.
Right. So,
If we use the software for some project there, there's no guarantees that it's.
correct, and that's part of, like, if I open this up again, the main screen when you come in, that you see basically the map of the US with all the dots. The colors represent that. So basically anything that is in blue is basically sanded and guaranteed and blessed from the city. And only any of the other ones are the ones that either were in that process, in the final process of getting their blessing, or it's a city that we just added because we wanted to. That's the case of basically New York, Dallas, Austin, etc. But it has a high level of accuracy. Okay, so back to this one. So for example, let's actually maximize all the residential units that is permitted in this particular location at an average of 1,200 square feet. So that's your typical, 2-bedroom kind of apartment unit. It doesn't physically fit in the space at that size. So basically I exceeded this capacity by 134,000 square feet.
This is the setback that calls it?
In this case, it's the FLR.
Oh, no, okay.
It's the FLR in this case. So, of course, I can make those units a little bit smaller. Let's see if that works out. Almost. So basically, 800 probably square feet. That will do the trick. There you go. So,
What's telling you that it didn't fit?
Oh.
Visually.
visually, okay. So, let me put that back. Yeah, you're right. That's a great question. So, for one, when there's an error in there, basically you see that internally here it's locked in this point, and actually here you see the red and says basically you exceeded the maximum FLR capacity in here. So now here's the trick, and this is one of the user experience and interface troubles that we're hoping to solve on this next year, is that it's really hard for us to predict what is the solution to that problem, because not the same in every city, and the potential paths of solving that is very different. Some cities will have incentives that you can use or variances that you can request, but it's really hard. So our notification system up there is kind of like in its baby stage. Let's put it that way. Now this one, let me flip it around a little bit in here. The yellow is, of course, the residential potential. The gray is parking. So now it knows how many parking spaces it needed to provide for the 281 residential units. It knows that it requires active frontage, so it's putting a liner. And on the remainder, it's actually making, and it knows how many parking spaces it can fit in that vertically, including ramps. And then it's basically saying, you're going to need 5 stories of parking to be able to meet the demand. So going back to incentives, some cities will actually give you a parking reduction if you're close to transportation automatically. Miami, unfortunately, is not one of those. You qualify because of proximity, but you need to request it by variance. So by waiver. So this list of variances, waivers, and special permits, they autofill automatically based on your qualifications to it. If you don't qualify to them, it doesn't show up. So some projects, it's going to be empty. Some projects are actually going to be very full like this one. So let me go down here and say, yep, I want to apply for the TOD residential parking reduction. Go back. Let it just go through it. It dropped almost 2 stories of parking because of the 30% parking reduction. Maybe now I can go back up to 1,000, more or less 1,000 square feet. And from that point, not even. Oh, I went over by 3,000 square feet, so anyway.
90.
But you know what I mean. It's 990 probably is the magic number. Here's the other thing. I don't know if you follow one of the projects that is one of the latest projects that is happening in New York. Is one of those that there is an FAR, there is no height limit in certain places, and there's this, most of the buildings around that is about 20 stories and some, and there's one building that is about 40 stories that is going to happen in the middle. Because FAR doesn't regulate common spaces. So what they did is in the middle of the tower, they made about 5 stories of common spaces. You know, so events and spaces and the pool and everything. Of course, now they got a 40-story building. So we do incorporate into the system that type of component. So let me actually put this back down so I can actually show you what I mean. Okay, so here's, I open up to, so this one kind of turned to a little training. So I'll show you a little bit of everything. But these are your building parameters. And this is, shows, for example, the depth of that line of building in there, the minimum depth of a tower, the average depth of a tower. So this is, of course, that depth of from the short end of the tower, and efficiency. So in this one, it's taking into consideration a 20% efficiency of the building. So for whatever uses you added in there, it's going to add a 20% for corridor structure, vertical circulation, et cetera, et cetera. So you can actually, by legal terms, have 100,000 square feet of building, but your physical building is going to be 120,000. And that sometimes pushes you over the height limits, for example. So this is the type of analysis that we built into the system. Parking, by the way, you can also change from different parking structure types. So you can actually choose from heading to way, parallel, angle. That's sometimes the problem if your site is too narrow. It just doesn't physically fit in terms of the parking structure. Now, let me add a little bit of pizzazz into this one. Let's throw 5,000 square feet of retail in the base of this thing, and let me throw in 12,000 square feet of office. So as long as the zone itself allows you to do mixed use, the system is just going to keep letting you add uses. Now, keep in mind, this one was definitely not built to be architectural design, right? So you're not going to have, you know, that part of office and then the rest retail. So it's strictly a massing model type of analysis. Okay? So now let me generate a report, and then I'll show you something else what it's doing. This one takes about a minute or so. Let me just generate a report, and I'll show you what does on the end. Statistics. Now you can start actually doing some analysis in there and see, in this particular case, and this for your financial projections in there, 64% of the building is actually sellable, rentable. So now you can start actually putting price per square foot in there, and you can see, and in this particular case, 23% is for parking. It's not so bad, but now we're using a lot of this for certain cities and saying, your requirement is forcing 40 to 45% of the building to developers to spend 40% or more of their budget just on parking. And so it really comes in. And we can go back to the regulations and say, let's change it from 2 parking spaces per residential unit to 1, and let us show you how that impacts your city in terms of a lot of things. So
So one of the things that you mentioned earlier was about, you know, sort of the ultimate sort of site capacity in terms of, I guess, you know, the maximum sort of build out. And, you know, I'm kind of wondering, you know, from, let's say, an investor's perspective, you know, using this application of being able to say, okay, there are these properties that are currently on the market, and here's the asking price for these properties relative to the ultimate value that they would have to a developer, and, you know, which ones are significantly underpriced or overpriced, you know, and kind of, you know, really beginning to understand, I guess, you know, pricing inefficiencies that may exist within the market and kind of how to take advantage of those.
Correct. Yes. So with that one, let me switch to let's try North Miami, just so you see something different. So precisely from what you have mentioned there, we created the filters. So the filters is a typical kind of search system, but the last one, Sonic Calculations, is basically our own calculated data. So for example, let's say that you're looking for parcels that are the very least 6,000 square feet in area, that have a minimum frontage of 65 feet, because you have a very particular type of product that you're looking at, that is on a corner, that is within the opportunity zones, and that you can actually build, I don't know, 35,000 square feet of building.
Additional or just total?
Total. So is the total area in there. So basically those are the sites that are being selected, and let's actually throw in another one, I don't know. And that I can actually do at least 30 residential units in there. So 99 parcels actually meet that qualification. You can actually see them on the map as you see it right there, or you can actually see it as a list. So why don't I show you this? With this, we're gonna be, within the next couple of months, releasing a new score system in this, is part of the courthouse system. So basically it's a development score. And we're gonna have multiples, like a redevelopment score for square footage of capacity, a redevelopment score for footprint, a redevelopment score for residential units, on and on and on and on. So, and one of them is actually gonna be delta of capacity. Because in some cases, you can actually find, maybe you're looking for 100,000 square feet of building, but the existing building is already 85,000 square feet. So it makes no sense to turn down that building to just get an extra 15,000 square feet. So it will actually start making some metrics, and of course that's on my computer, so I don't have it in there, but it basically already have a whole formula system that it will actually make the decision and say, we recommend this one for renovation, or we recommend this one for tear down and redevelopment. And that's where we can actually start putting pricing in there. Because
Are you integrating this obviously with the property tax database as well, from the standpoint of looking at what is the current land value, the current improvements value, and then in some way utilizing that information as well, or not?
yes. My goal is actually to have the API for that. Basically, we do have a direct connection with all of the IRS type of, and also the local tax records. So we know sales, we know basically development costs. Oh, basically.
Can you calculate impact fees?
We can calculate it, yes. We haven't put it up there because we haven't developed that other component yet. But yes, that question comes up often. And that has a direct relation with infrastructure. So what we're gonna be doing with Fort Lauderdale is they're gonna give us all the information of water, sewer, traffic, etc. And we're gonna say, yeah, your parcel is allowed to be 20 stories and density of 200 units per acre. Your infrastructure on the ground can only handle 75. So it's up to you. If you put 75, and maybe your impact is way less, your redevelopment half of what you're allowed. But maybe it's maybe kind of like a phase one type of development. Or you develop the whole thing and you know that you have a big impact fee on your way. But it's one of those things that we're forcing developers and investors to make the decision in kind of like a type of situation. And it's years sometimes. I mean, by the time you hire an architect, hire the attorney to get all the stats, goes to the office, to the municipality, they take 6 months to tell you, oh, you're missing your survey. And you go all the back. So that's kind of like the thing is that just provide all the information out there, and hopefully we'll make better cities. Yeah.
What about for like, let's say federal grant programs? Have you guys built in the if-thens to run like a comparison on the lots that would actually?
Interesting. So not yet, but we definitely have the possibility to basically make a comp analysis for sure. Interesting. No, we haven't done that yet, but
Do you
we
guys
can.
ever contract with like third parties to help you out with this?
We do with some things, like for example for LiDAR, we do have certain contracts for LiDAR, but yeah, we do look out. I didn't show you that, no? Did I? Oh no, I did in Fort Lauderdale. So basically all the system building is based on LiDAR. So there's some cities that don't have it, and we can actually outsource that.
What's your response been from the hospitality developers?
Interesting. So, so actually has been, we've done a couple of projects for them. Basically they've asked like, listen, we're looking to do 200 key in the Lauderdale beach area. We need to find the best one for it. So yeah, we've done that, and they actually love the idea. And that's one of the things. The system is, he's very honest. It keeps you within the lines. So it will only show up the ones that are allowed by right, basically, or will let you know if they're a special condition. So it's been very positive.
Yeah.
But the other thing is because we can actually make proximity conditions. I think on this one we only have a couple of examples. We're expanding this, obviously, but for example, we can say, forget what was the address of this one. Basically, you can actually say, I want to be at least 2 miles away from any other hotel, for example, or this particular hotels, or this particular uses. So you really start narrowing down those types of situations. So it's actually been quite interesting. One of the clients that has showed up to our door recently was Whole Foods. Basically because they needed something like this. We need this amount of acreage, we need this particular FAR requirements, we need this particular height requirements, we need to be in a corner, we need to be, and of course we need to be 3 miles away from any other Whole Foods. So yeah, this is the type of queries that we can do. So this is also a service that we do. Of course, this is really just a narrowed down version of our filters. This one is not really meant for public consumption. But this is kind of like the portal to our main database. As you can see, there's tons of other filters that we just don't expose. Because I mean, we tried, this was our first version of the system. It was too much. It was
Overwhelming.
too overwhelming. So when we went into this one, we kept it kind of after asking a lot of our users, what is the typical things, it became in that. But we can add more as needed.
But it knows every hotel room in the city, so to speak?
Well, it knows based on the information that we're providing. So based on what is information available. We do have a national data source of general information, and there is a lot of that information, but it's a national aggregated source. So we do put a disclaimer, it's
Sure.
aggregated, yes. Yeah.
How often do you update the maps?
Oh, great question. So the maps, it really depends on the city. So every time, we do have the cities that have a direct access to their servers, so it updates as soon as they update. The ones that they send us the information is basically as soon as they send us. But in average, we are updating about once a month, for sure. We do have a direct feed, for example, for South Florida, for the MLS. And that one updates 3 times a day, actually. So if something got sold in the morning, it actually shows up in the afternoon that is sold already. So that is available for Miami, well, all Miami-Dade, I think Broward too, if I'm not mistaken. So, yes.
So you mentioned that after, an X period, the city will take, ownership of the product. What I'm curious about is like, are you guys selling to them as a perpetual license, and then you take the angle out of like the service contract, right, to where there's, no support from your end if they don't continue with it?
No, so good question. So no, actually our things, we do have a typical implementation fee for us to put all the stuff, and then it becomes a monthly subscription or annual subscription. It's from the point of view of the cities, it's actually extremely affordable. So most of our contracts as of today, our implementation fee has been between $40,000 to $120,000. That has been it. It's not that much. Now, our game really is the month, and that monthly ranges from $2,500 to about $5,000 a month. It depends on really how many licenses or how many things they go.
Do you go per seat, per department?
It's basically per department for the most part. We don't really care if they have 10 licenses or 50 licenses. Our system really is irrelevant for that. What is important is the service. So if they don't want SonicHew, for example, that's a different thing. if they want Sony review that I haven't shown you yet, that's a different thing. If they don't want code text that I haven't shown you there, that is the next one, it's a different thing. So with that, the text. The text is basically, remember that I mentioned the North Miami Ditch Unicode? One of the typical complaints that cities have of Unicode is that it's super expensive to update. And it takes a long lead time, basically 3 to 4 months to update, to update an amendment and put it available online. So that puts the city in a really awkward position that what they are promoting is out of date, and there's hundreds of projects that come in for permitting that they have to do that first step of saying, sorry, you used an old code. That sucks. You know? So basically, this was not part of our original business plan. We did it for a particular reason, and we added an edit situation that now the cities can make their own edits online, and they can be published instantaneously. So this is the version of the for Lauderdale code. It's fully navigatable, so you can actually just go through each one of the articles that you're looking at.
Is that public facing as well?
Yes. Yeah, and this one is actually even without being signed in. You can actually
Just like Unicode.
Exactly, in that regard. Now, the interesting thing in this one is that you can also actually make bookmarks. So that is the benefit of making an account. For example, say, oh yeah, this is the stuff that I thought this is. Anyway.
That's right.
Okay, ignore that. But basically, you can make bookmarks. You can add notes to it, and you can actually organize it in folders for your own thing. So, for example, I remember I have some. I guess I do. So you can actually refer that back, and then you can also share it. So, for example, let's say that you're working in a team. You can actually, one of you guys is researching uses, the other one is researching parking, and you can actually share those bookmarks among yourself, and actually they will be there. Very briefly, this is the version for the city that they can actually come in and make edits in here. So they can actually change this to, I don't know, that sounds even worse, but anyway. So they can make this type of changes, and here's the fun part. And ironically, they love this. I mean, you know, internally they were kind of freaked out. Any change that gets done on the text, they need to put a reason why the change was made. And of course, in our back end, we know when and who made that change. And it's also
so it's almost like a Wikipedia sort of thing, almost in one sense.
In one sense, but it's actually done by the city themselves.
Yeah.
So it also has two steps. You see that there's a save button and there's a publish button. So in North Miami, the city manager is the only one that has the publish button. So after it's been reviewed, he's the one that says publish, and now becomes the public facing instantaneously, the most up-to-date version of the code. And we keep, of course, all the versions and so on. So now here's why we did this one, and it was completely out of our purview, is that we are working in a way that, let me find something.
Are you going to convert it to
Drainage, it doesn't really matter. We are at a point that we can start making direct connection between the numbers in here with the calibration back here. So the goal, the ultimate goal, will probably maybe a year or so away because that one is a bigger ticket. The goal is as the city changes the text, the calibration changes automatically, the mapping can change automatically, and the whole city map, the 3D modeling can be updated automatically as well, based on the latest version of the system.
Can you integrate among different agencies, like will it flag that like, hey, FDOT is going to give you X, Y, Z, or the county and the cities
They never get along, yes. So, yes, absolutely. So part of the process that we do, and actually the FAA was a big case in Ferraro, that this doesn't even show up on their regulations. But we added in. So we do have in the overlays, we have actual overlays, and we also have informational overlays. But basically, they don't do anything, they just kind of show up and they give you a little description. So with that, actually, let me see. Yeah, here it is. So remember the report that we did? It gets, basically you are told in here, oh, your report is ready. Let's open that up. this is what shows up on the other end. So you have the addresses and folios that you added in there. You have an aerial image of the site, a zoning, a location, the list of all the uses that is allowed in different combinations, your general numbers in terms of zoning, a couple of elevations, the model with parking, with office, with the common spaces that I was telling you about. Again, a couple of different elevations and charts. And here's actually precisely to your question. So here is the general number. Like for example, we do have a disclaimer that this is the information from the property records. You should get a survey in there. The overlays that apply and all the additional information. So for example, county future land use. So that was not part of the zoning, but we added in here as an informational layer. It happens a lot that you go in and the zoning says office, but the underlying says single family, and you're screwed. You know, it happens a lot of times, unfortunately. So here's part of that one as well. So and at the end, we also have a little site plan that tells you basically all of the setback requirements, the base, the tower, all that kind of stuff. Have one more, and then I'll shut up. So, zone check. So this one is very new still. We're kind of testing it out. North Miami has it. Fort Lauderdale, they're thinking about it. The idea is that from a lot of the cities, they tell us that 40% or more of their time of their staff is spent on questions and answers. They call them, this is my parcel, I want to know if I can do a pet parlor, what is my front setback, I mean, whatever. So this is the first version, and the idea is that it could be in the front desk, and people can start coming in and say, oh, yep, this is my parcel. And the system will just spit out your basic information. Of course, I chose one that's probably taken the longest.
Is that about right? 40% of time spending questions that are answered online. That's about right? Okay.
So here it is. So it tells you your parcel number, your zoning, your area of the parcel, your existing building, your setback requirements, and all that kind of stuff. And best of all, because it's supposed to be public, let's see if this works.
What? What
Yeah.
are you guys gonna put?
Huh? So basically, there's all that information from that one, and you can just take it at that point. Wow. So, and of course, in this one, if you click on that one, it's actually going to go back into this one and search where all that zoning requirement, that N is not supposed to be there. Anyway, basically finds where R4.4 is referenced in the text of the code everywhere else. That's it, yes.
So, have you guys started tapping like the internal channel for driving adoption, like say your local private designers, or city planners, whatever, people in that, right, to drive the adoption at the public level?
So, precisely this is why I'm here. I mean, you guys are the future users of this. And you are also the guys that either on your own private kind of professional life, you can use the system, or you can visit the guys, like you go to the city and say, oh my gosh, you should be using this. So yes, basically these are our outreach. Basically that's why we're happy to give you guys licenses for using, and by the way, you can not only use it for law, you can use it in any of the cities that we have available. So if you're curious in New York, hack at it. That's basically part of our outreach. We do go in a lot of the conventions, the planning conventions, and as of today, it has a great response. We really have no competition out there yet. I mean, SREE is trying to do something like that, but you have to model it because it's still.
Have you tapped any of the local technology floors?
Yes, we have, and we actually have won a couple of prizes for innovative ideas. Actually, one of the best ones we got a prize that they gave us. I don't even remember the amount, but we've basically been paying nothing to Amazon for the last like 6 months or something. So yes, we're trying to get into that, and in particular, we're trying to get into the wave of the smart city movement. Because really, this is the only system that allows you to really see the future of what's possible out there in terms of everything else.
Are you in Orlando, and if you are, how does it deal with like a place like Disney World, where it's its own world,
Yes.
so to speak, and beyond that, would a place like Disney have a use for this, to vision out
Their modeling.
their dream?
That's a great question. So let me ask the first is what do we do with Disney? So there's some situations that we just don't calibrate it because there's really there is a PUD, it's very specific, so it's not really meant to be modeled. With that said, we also have the ability to layer regulations one on top of each other. So for example, Disney could have their own code. So whenever you go there, it's gonna know, oh, okay, there's the city regulations, which has a priority of 1, but there's another code on that particular section that has a priority of 2. We need to use that one. And you can and then we can do that also on our database. So you can actually have a property record that is at the state level, property record that is at the county level, property record that is at the city level, and property record that is almost at the subdivision level. Because that has been like the biggest Lafayette, that was entertaining. They have a county data set that is typically almost block dimensions, and that's how they pay taxes and all that kind of stuff. There's the city one that is a completely different, planned completely differently. Different streets, everything is different. And when we tried to merge it at the beginning, that was a disaster. So that's why basically we came up with the idea of multi-layers. So you can actually make analysis at the county level and also make an analysis at the city level. So that's how we currently handle it. Yeah.
Are you going to augment reality so you can just hold up your phone and you can see the zoning of roads right next to you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So actually, well.
I'm trying to look ahead.
Oh, yes, absolutely. So if you, that one I already turned off, but let me see if I still have this one. So the first idea that we have in this one is that it will actually follow and it would actually render the capacity of the building on top of the image in there. So that's the goal. I just have other hoops that I need to jump first, but yes, that's kind of like the idea. Yeah.
Do you have like a channel licensing structure, or you intend on always staying like, your company right in the cities, or are you planning on leveraging other workforces?
No, we're definitely thinking of leveraging other workforces. So we are in the process of making a version of CodeHub that is meant specifically for brokers. So it actually has a CRM system built into it. So you can actually start connecting your properties, your clients, with potential development potential. So the whole idea again is that normally you get the brokers get notifications when a property goes out for sale or goes out on the market. Or now we can even give you a notification when the zoning changed and now that property changed capacity, for example. So that is, we're working on it, but it's probably going to be released at the end of the year.
I meant more like, so the way, I imagine you guys like a manufacturer, right? And then every manufacturer typically has a channel business, right? Are you guys gonna have middlemen between the consumer and yourself, or are you always
Real
gonna
estate
go
development, not software development. Angelo.
Interesting. So you're thinking about expansion, and basically how we're going to be expanding. So yeah, I mean, in some cases, and actually that's mostly for the international component, we are going to be leveraging a lot of other sources out there to be basically our voice out there. For example, back in Ecuador, that I just came back from there, is actually going to be their architectural community that they're going to be doing, and also the university. So they're going to be the main channel that they're going to be putting us out there. The goal in there is that the cities are a little bit skittish about the monthly subscription service thing. So in this particular situation, I don't know if that's going to be the end, but the potential model is going to be that university is the one that is going to be fronting the monthly subscription, and the city gets a benefit out of it, and the students get, of course, just licenses and access to it and training and all that kind of stuff. Part of the process, that health check that I mentioned at the beginning, we're going to do it with the students. So with the legal department, with the planning department, with the architectural department, we'll read the code together and laugh and point fingers and all that kind of stuff. But then that's going to be probably the benefit that we're going to be trying to do on the other one. But we're so young that we only have 4 salespeople at this point.
Is this patented?
Yes. I wrote that patent 6 years ago or something. Yes.
I have a really basic question, not
Please.
complicated. This is gonna be offered to us for a certain time period for, I guess, all 3 of those, or just the Zone IQ stuff?
All 3 of them.
Oh, all 3 of them?
All 3 of them, yes.
Okay, because when I try to log in, it just bumps me.
Back out?
Yeah, I can't create like a
Yeah, me
project or anything.
You too?
I think
Okay,
Brian
so
said he has to
when do you
offer
sign up?
Just now,
Oh, just, okay,
right
so.
before you came in.
Okay, so basically, so here's the
Brian's
typical
fault.
process. Typically, if you're a private user, you have to pay a license. Now that we see, you use all of your university accounts?
Yes.
Perfect. So basically, well, it's Saturday, my guy is probably
Catch me
still
outside, how
asleep.
about that?
Basically, so basically, as soon as he sees all the requests from the university, he's gonna automatically give you access in there.
Okay.
So, give him a couple of hours.
Oh, that's
and-
why I kept going to the account page.
Yeah. So basically, we just have to, we're basically gonna bypass the paying process, and just give you access to it. Now, I'll do it, not in the car, but as soon as I get home.
No rush.
Yes.
How often do you update, like, I noticed in Fort Lauderdale, like, the icon is built already, and I didn't see it under.
True. And so that's the other thing, is like, in Fort Lauderdale, we use the LiDAR, and of course the icon was not there. So, that's one of the next things that we're gonna be doing, is actually have a method for the city to, most applications now come with a digital version of the building.
But after it's approved,
Yeah.
right?
After
So you
gets
don't want a
approved.
lot of people.
No, you don't want a lot of people
That's like
freaking
a whole
out.
different nightmare.
They do want us to have something like this. It's not exactly the same, but it's gonna look like that. Something that, not here. Something like that, more or less, that when you get closer in there, basically it's gonna say what is in review, what has been approved, what's under construction, yada, yada, yada. Now, the hope, and that's what I want, we're designed to test these models. We're using SketchUp models, we're using BIM models. The BIM models are a little heavy, so we're still kind of making decisions. The idea is that they can actually have a portal where they can actually say, okay, these folios came in for permit. These folios were approved. These folios under construction. These folios have a certificate of occupancy. At that moment, that model comes back to us and it becomes one of those great buildings. And we actually turn off the development potential of that site. So that's the hope. So basically right now, we're actually, all the squarish ones all over the place is directly from LiDAR. Basically, they're just extrusions. All the very specific ones, we're actually doing by hand right now. A great question. Yes?
I'm sure you showed early on, but how easy is it to merge plats? Like you have 6 or 8.
Yep.
They're easy to merge and they.
Extremely easy to merge. So yes, so I'll do that one more time, but I'll try to do something to shock you a little bit there. So you can merge as many parcels as you want.
Parcels.
Yeah, so for example, let me make a funky here. Okay, so for example, you can actually do that one. And, actually I'll show you, you can also do it one by one. You can also draw with a geometry and draw it.
Okay.
So you can actually do that now. So for example, let's say that you want to do all of that, right? So of course, in some places, it actually tricks you over, there's probably a parcel in there. Okay, so there it goes. So now, why I chose that one, I'll show you in a minute. Notice that this one is one zoning requirement, and this is another zoning district, right? Let me run this project. So basically, whenever it does that, and there's actually a little bit of training in how to use this application. It's going to make two buildings. One of them is going to follow the regulations of the one side, and the other one is going to follow the regulations on the other. So we are working in a way that you can actually potentially rezone.
Yeah.
You can do it, but it won't merge it. At this point, it won't merge it back in together. So that's the stuff that we're working on. But I'll show you basically what it does and how you basically navigate from one to the other. Just give it a couple more minutes. Second minute. Okay, so there you go. So basically, it created two buildings. And here's actually an example of the proximity situation. It does know if this one, for example, has a side setback and this one has a side setback too, but because they're under the same ownership, that is ignored. But you still need to follow the regulations of the zone individually. So whenever you see this, something like this, that you have two buildings, obviously one is highlighted and one is not, if you click on the other one, then all of the numbers change. So basically this one is a T5, if I switch to the other one now, that's a T6 and all the numbers. Or you can also navigate it in here, building 1 and building 2. But you can also go to the main one, and now this is a summary of both. So you can still do the summary of each one of those, but notice that, for example, you can't generate a report for both of them at this time. You still have to do one by one. Sorry. We're still developing some of this functionality. Speaking of functionality, I didn't show you before. See these little arrows? Every time you see these little arrows on top of the information in here, or some of the charts or anything like that, it means you can download it as a CSV file. So you can actually, basically there's all your data in there, maximum height regulation, etc. Yes?
So it performs the same thing if the parcels are separated by a road, and it'll put it two buildings.
Yes, it will actually do it to both. Yes.
So just to clarify, we'll all have access to this? Okay.
Yeah, you
As long as you just sign up and...
Yeah,
okay.
sign up and make sure that it's with your school address, email
Right.
address,
Okay.
and we'll basically give you access.
Okay,
Yes.
great. Thank you.
I saw some case studies, but are there any tutorials or anything like that
Yes.
embedded in the system?
Yeah, so two things. Definitely there are some tutorials. There were several videos. We'll send you the link. So whenever we actually see your account and upgrade it, we'll send you an email with all this stuff. And at the same time, this little thing down here is actually a chat function. So you can actually send us a message. If we're online, we'll respond immediately. If not, and it's probably, I wish I could say that I will be responding, but it's one of our planners that will be responding, for sure. I was there for, I think, a whopping like 5 minutes, and I just went around and screamed.
It's good to know from an owner though, like what people are wondering how to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any other questions? Great, thank you so much. Let's go ahead and take about a 10-minute break. Make sure you're back here about 5 minutes before 10.
I just like what this
Yeah. Oh, wow.
That's what I'm thinking of, like, for this, like,
No, and
Is it really?
if there are days to do it, but then on the other side, seriously. As part of the service, and then so absolutely, we are participating as part of no, absolutely. We'll give you basically, we'll go in, we'll show you, we'll give them a list of all our services.
I'll even bring my especially with the capacity and our due diligence.
It's all in, all of it.
And then like actually.
Not for yes.
But no, it's
That's actually
yeah, that sounds great.
yeah. I'll ask him. I don't know if absolutely. Any contact you want to have. So what I'll do is rather work. So you have my contact. Go from there. Appreciate it. Absolutely. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes. That's my great.
You really have to bring
No.
No.
Was there?
This should be a
We're very we just need to be
How was it?
I don't even know what to show you. Yeah, it's the outline.
My body doesn't know that advantage, but like.
He was like partying and I was saying hello.
Yeah. It's like right.
They recently hired people
What are they
to
gonna
basically that was the goal, basically that's how we all came in. They wanted to report.
I just got it right, and I'll pick it up and shake it.
But then you support scenario.
Yeah, you see you.
Just shut it down.
I know.
This is
critical.
You know where the Costco is, that new Costco is?
I love the job. It's
East of this giant. This came landing, or just
coordinating a herd of cats.
Does it?
Because I have to be basically the head design of
Is
the
it worth the money?
well, that's 2 billion.
It's worth what they're going to be offering me, and then after a couple of months, I'm going to ask for a pay raise because I can't get rid
Yeah.
of a position where everyone relies on
You
me.
have to be, maybe do that after a couple of months there, like you feel like it's that, like, lenient.
And then it crashed.
That's what I was just saying. Keep up with like, it's back there.
15 people asking like
It's just a disaster.
Yep.
Now it's all
keyword manager. And I'm like, I have no management. But the vice president is going to be literally the person working with me.
As long as you reach 30 and don't have to walk off you, which I don't think I see you anyway, it's usually fine. Yeah.
Probably like a little guy that I'd be in the head design school.
first development.
It's not stand out.
Software.
They're about to change her ring. I'm like, hey.
Oh, right. I'd be like,
Hey.
hey. But no, that's me on my own. I have to get my own place.
Little comedy, like, especially when you
Are you looking at your phone?
I didn't know the market.
that apartment.
Like, not like inside. Yeah, I've been on tour.
Really? An actual room?
Give me this.
One of
I'm
my
gonna try to search around. I found one place that I really like. That the guy I'm waiting for.
But it was in town.
Because they were like,
Because they didn't have to
They
like
said-
some neighborhood, you don't need that again. Just don't need
You
it.
don't need that.
You don't need
really
that.
have that in Chicago.
You don't
They
need
do have that.
it.
They have that
Not
everywhere.
South Side. Not South Side. I'm not going to South Side.
Area, like,
I'm going to South
You really
Side.
have that everywhere. Please go there.
just get somebody that's experienced.
Yeah, you. Did you have a friend there?
He's on a tour for me. And I have like, the what?
That's why
There's a fire. I don't know
I think
have to I think part of me is that listen, when it gets to those negative scores, you need the but like for me, that's one thing I did not like me out with the charger. It's hard to get. You're like sweating. It's just like your body adjusts to that. But I do miss it, not gonna lie, but like only for like 30.
Yeah, I like that.
And the quietness, that's
They don't charge me for quiet, and then the next day, all you hear is tires screeching in a car accident.
Oh yeah, no, that's you know, it's no longer beautiful when your tires start to skid. It's like,
That's what I love to ride Atlanta, because no one would go out in the snow. Like I would be the only one driving because there's no salt or anything on the roads there.
Once though, that it gets real serious when your tires that happened to me. I had to stop the car. I was like, can I like split a little bit? No, like my car got stuck. Another car got stuck. So like the bunch of snow just like impacted around.
I'm not bringing my car to Chicago. I mean, I'm going to be off of the What's great about it? $100 half, right? I can take it to I was like, I forgot about that. I always do that whenever I'm there. Guess what they're doing? That's what they're doing this fall. They're doing that Apple one where you go like this. No, talk about cheese. Like, realize, wait a second, I can't bring it back. So I left it, like, I literally packed the whole suitcase. Like, half of it was on your jackets, and I left it there.
Left it there?
Yeah.
In Chicago?
At my friend's place.
Oh, okay.
5 days.
So you're gonna,
Yeah.
I like immediately after. August 11th, you have the
August 12th.
No, he's leaving that after.
Yeah. Bye.
Thank God, bye.
Bring his whole like Foot Locker here. Bye. That was really good because after graduation, we were like taking off the I was like, I need to go home. You go back to the library. That time Florida was not set in stone. It was completely.
Drag singer, dancing, cutting hair, and everything. Like, doing it all. I mean, it wasn't the greatest, but still,
they did a pretty damn good job considering everything she was doing.
It's come a long way. I was just
And that was volunteers. That was a volunteer sitting in the crowd saying, cut my hair.
Yeah, no, I was laughing at her and be like, yeah, cut this for me. I'm looking for a bounce out.
Yeah, this one here is like a...
It's glass.
Yeah.
Plastic is no good.
Could you guys confirm Gene's gonna be here?
Yeah, he emailed me saying, I mean, it was yesterday, but.
Okay.
Yeah, it's your email. This is progress.
Alright, we're just ready to get started. We're still missing a couple of our mentors. Alright, so here is the plan of action. So we have 6 groups. Hello? We have 6 groups. We have a total of 6 mentors. 4 of the 6 mentors are here. What we're going to do is talk just for a couple of minutes here. Then we're going to break up into the groups with the mentors and go to some different classrooms here on this floor and the floor right below us, and then give you guys as much time as you need to work with your mentors. Ideally, if you guys could come back here maybe a few minutes before noon, just to kind of give us a report on sort of what you accomplished in the mentoring session, and then after that, we're done, okay? And in terms of the e-portfolio, once again, if you've got any questions on that, then you can kind of come to me, at that point in time and ask questions, but otherwise, you're free to go. Okay, so at this point, what I want to do is give each of the mentors a chance to do a quick introduction so that you know, obviously, which one is your mentor if you haven't already made contact. So we'll start with Gene. Can you give a quick intro? We'll kind of go down the...
Sure. My name is Gene Berman. I am retired. I came out here about 23 years ago from Southern California to open up a commercial real estate brokerage operation. A very short period of time, top 10 offers, led us to a #1 status within 9 years. I was awarded entry into being a board director for a private company, and over the next 10 years helped to grow the business on the East Coast and took the company public. And now I'm here to help you guys.
Harry Cozen, I think I met all of you before. The label company I've been involved in.
Come on, Harry.
Of course, for about 10 years. I don't want to say it, so
Okay, Mark?
Mark Peterson, Fifth Third Bank. I've been here for over 20, 25 years, something like that. I'm the guy, one of the 3-4 guys everybody calls for big real estate projects for financing. Projects I've done are Aventura Mall, Fountain Blue, Alpha Mall, and I've done a lot of really, really small stuff that you guys probably wouldn't even know about. So glad to help you all out.
Thank you.
my name is George Garcia. I'm not retired. In fact, I'm working my ass off. founder of Garcia Stromberg Architecture and Interior Design, Land Planning, and a whole host of other things. I'm a graduate of the University of Miami, and I was once involved in your program on your board here, and I'm pretty excited about the fact that I subscribe a lot, and everybody in our firm subscribes totally to a whole host of ways of doing business. One of them is to be comprehensive about our field. We are not in the business of painting pretty pictures and have developers tell us that what's right or wrong. We like to participate in that process, and I think we do so by learning the ropes that you're learning, whether you're an architecture student or a business student or an engineering student. I was just saying that one of the things that's really a challenge for us, that I think this is why I'm here today, Juanita invited me to do so, pleasure, is that I believe the development world in today, and I've been doing it since 1987 when I founded the firm, the profession of development is the one profession I see that has the least number of professionals in it. There are no, I mean, we find so few professional developers that when we do run into one, we really hook onto them, because I think it's a much easier path and responsible path. So I'm hoping to contribute to the way we look at it when we get together with you.
Hi, my name is Jessica Abramson. I'm a 2011 graduate of this program here, and shortly after that I started working at Styles. I work in the development department, particularly in the retail group, and I'm responsible for development of grocery-anchored shopping centers. And I've been involved with the program in the classroom ever since I graduated, so I'm happy to be here today.
And Steve.
My name is Stephen Wash. Look around the room, I've met most of you, but for those that don't know me, I was a recent graduate here back in 2016. You know, this program opened doors opportunity for me. Met my business partner sitting in this classroom, launched my own company. You know, during the program, I was privileged to be mentored by Terry Stiles, and so was my business partner. You know, ever since Terry got sick, Harry took the reins, and you know, now he's our guidance there, and very blessed to be part of this board, and you know, here to help you guys. So.
Great. All right, so here's the plan. Once again, I think all the mentors are familiar with where the site is in downtown Fort Lauderdale, and some of the background information on the site. And your role today, as I see it, is to kind of present them with the information that you have collected so far about the site analysis, and then also ask them sort of any questions, get sort of any feedback that you can from them. Once again, their role is not to obviously help you to actually do the work on the project, but to, in essence, serve as a sounding board and to hopefully get their insights about how you can make your project a better project. Okay, is that pretty clear to everybody? All right, so we're going to have one group stay in here, so I guess group one, why don't you guys just stay in the room? Yes? Okay, so we started last week. All right, and so for this week, what they have been asked to do is to have a preliminary site analysis done for the project. And ultimately, in the subsequent weeks, they're going to be doing the regulatory analysis, the financial analysis, and the market analysis. So now, at this point, what I wanted to do today with the mentors was, number one, get to meet the mentors, but more specifically to kind of begin to sort of show the mentors what they have put together up to this point, and just once again start to get feedback and advice. Okay? All right. All right. With that, all right. So group one is going to stay in here. So I believe that is Mark, right? Okay. So Mark will stay in here. Carrie, you guys are going to go with Ryan. Ryan?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you guys take Harry down to the second floor. Okay. And then come back here 11:45. But group two. Okay, group two, follow me. And then group four, follow me. Obviously. Group two and group four. Okay, group four, I believe, is number 12. And group two is follow me here.
You need your brain?
Good to see you.
Mr. Peterson.
The visiting
How are you?
center.
Bart. There's still Mr. here.
Hello.
Nice to meet you.
I am not standing up here all day. I'm not in here. I'll just grab one.
We don't know where we're going.
Listen to the great voice.
CBRU,
You got your chair.
like companies
Okay,
that.
hold on one second, I'm gonna come back for you guys. Actually, come on with there. I know where I'm going.
You need help there?
No. Isabel.
Isabel, you're right about that, right about that. Not everybody's buying all.
This
But their
particular
target
site,
plan
I don't
for
think
the state governments,
travel
the local
and
governments,
visitors
right?
coming in.
Long-standing relationships between these gigantic bars and being their technology advisors.
That makes sense. So not the developer.
How are you?
Good, where are you?
We are good. We are trying to pinpoint what we're actually gonna do in this site. We have an idea.
Cadillac firm, like outside Lebanon, for the community.
Cadillac?
Cadillac firm.
Oh.
We are thinking along the lines of 55 and over community with some self-storage for the surrounding areas, because we're looking at the overall site and thinking there's a lot of rentals there now. And predominantly, it's not people that are 55 and over, from what we can find so far.
Right.
So we're thinking about going the route of not, of thinking kind of outside the box and trying to satisfy the seasonal visitor that may be coming here, the snowbird that may be coming here.
Right.
And then targeting more of like somebody that wants to be in the downtown living area, but that is the resident that's gonna fit that demographic. So that's where our mind is going so far, and we've been trying to do some research on what is the actual influx of people that are coming here on a seasonal basis that are 55 and over that would fit this product type. And then from there, we're trying to also have a mixed use of medical user to satisfy that group as well. And then some storage ability to be able to then satisfy the surrounding neighbors so that they have a one-stop area where now we're servicing the people that are renting that may need additional space, and now we're providing that, but we're not competing with the other.
Have you looked at all the self-storage down there already?
That's what we're in the process of seeing, is there a need or not?
There's the cubes one that's a couple blocks over, that's just giant one, right, with the white walls.
Yeah, there's that, there's Cliff Third, there's one, there's Alan Cooper's got one.
Where?
He and Tim did that one that Steve had to kind of build out.
Oh, okay.
You know, now 12 years later, trying to do the pro forma, but it's back. Can't remember the street, it's behind. Yeah, it's behind his loft. Yeah. Then he did it for the people that had lofts.
Well, what I found when I was doing my research for the 55 and over is there really isn't a lot available out there that's specifically 55 and over, any condo style setting from what I could find just on preliminary research.
So assisted living has got so many variations, I call it assisted. I think you need to define what you're targeting. So 55 and older, there are so many mutations to it.
Right.
That you gotta be careful, which is why commercial banks have been reluctant to jump in and finance it, because it's a business operation.
Right.
It's not a real estate operation. So you gotta define what you're building. I'm not trying to take you away from where you're going, because I'm in that category now. I'm gonna need one of those facilities at some point, right? So, you know, Rhodes has got, he sold his site, that's gonna be.
It's in an ALF.
That's,
So
is
that's
it
like more
ALF or?
medical. It's gonna be like, is more assisted living. So this one we're thinking like active, like kind of like the.
Active adult.
What is that place there where they, like near Central Florida, where they just like party all the
Villages?
time? Yeah. We're thinking like that, but vertical.
Yeah,
kind
and
of.
then I don't know what Belmont Village is down there by Sunrise Harbor, but that's coming up too. And that's, I don't even know what their program is, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're definitely not thinking like ALS
Yeah, no, you're
Staff.
thinking it's gonna be designated for people 55.
Correct.
Adult living.
Adult living, 55 and over, yes, that's what we're thinking.
For sale or rental?
We're thinking to have a mix, to have both. Because see, I know that you have a lot of vacation people, a lot of snowbirds coming from Canada, New York, that they're here, peak season is January through March, but some get here as early as October, all the way through before Easter is when they leave. So we're thinking, do we have a mix of summer for sale for your folks that are here year round, and then some we do manage ourselves or as the income stream, right?
Okay.
And we furnish them, and now we have a seasonal rental, so we can charge the higher premiums than the rent, as opposed to your market rents at what, and I'm finding a little bit of mix with the market rents. And what I'm seeing that's actually renting, and then what I'm seeing, there's some fluctuation between $1 all the way to $3, and I'm trying to find that.
Do you guys have access to REEs?
No.
Here, I'll let you sign on, and you're gonna have to wipe out my password and give it to you.
Okay.
So it's reis.com. So just one use.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we probably shouldn't hit it from 4 different IPs.
Well, yeah. I'll do it since I'm doing the market.
Yeah, so, and then the, sign on.
Log in?
Yeah, I just thought about that. Oh, four different IPs simultaneously. That'll throw a flag.
Yeah. I have access to the MLS database, and then I have access to RPR, which is the commercial database on our end, but it's got all mixed information.
Yeah.
So I've got CoStar.
CoStar is better. REES will give you some good, general.
Okay.
CoStar will drill it into the property, and REES will give you the.
But did CoStar actually give you the rental amounts?
Yeah.
Did you find some consistency though? Because I have rental amounts, but I couldn't find a consistency in order to really determine
Oh, now that, we'll have to define the, like, I'll show you the boxes that we have to check.
Like CoStar doesn't have effective rents, it's listed, right?
Right, that's what I mean. But where I was able to pull what they actually leased for, but I couldn't find an actual consistency. I'll show you, I printed the reports and brought to us.
The only thing, like whenever I access it from Marcus and Millichap's computer, I can get effective rents.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, it's strange. Because it's the same
Yeah,
screen.
so-
I was salty.
Yeah, if you know the address, it's like that, you would mark the reports.
Okay.
I feel like it's on.
Yeah.
What?
I don't like, now Ryan is watching this.
We
Hi,
see you,
Ryan.
Ryan.
Yeah.
Who's watching us? Can
Steady.
you erase it? He's gonna tell her. You think so?
Yeah.
Random apartment. No, or senior housing.